6 million souls perished. But it was one of the reasons that the establishment of the state got underway, proceeded. Establishment of the state proceeded, and also teachers, one of my other students, and he's not a religious oak, said to me that kids must know their history, and they must know what the history is like, that Israel's the Jewish state, and it's for us, and we'll be protected here. And we can't, kids must know their history, because there's a song from a rock band that I know, and it's a very, very, the words are very, very thought-provoking. The future's in the past.
That's interesting. I'll tell you something that's happening in America. Sorry, I'll just start back for 1 second. America, the Democrats are trying to kill all the history of America. They hate the American culture. They hate everything. They want to change it to a brand new country. It's ridiculous. History is so important, what you're saying. It's the essence of who you are.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
Guys, let's go to it properly.
All right.
I don't want this to be a political. We all have the same political views. You must know, guys, that every time there's something political, Gavin, you say on here, YouTube is vetting it. I'm serious. They're now vetting copywriting. They've added a whole lot of criteria now to their vetting process. I needed like a hole in the head to vet it.
You'd rather go to the vet if your dog's sick.
Exactly. All right. Kev, teach
Okay. Okay. Continuing where we left off about Hadlakat Nerot, which is lighting candles, it is vital that kindling shouldn't take place after sunset, since this would constitute a malacha, forbidden activity. If a woman is likely to be delayed in carrying out the mitzvah, her husband or another member of the household must do it instead. Because you're breaking Shabbos then. It's fire. It's the most basic. It's the first thing we know of. You're creating a fire. You're starting a fire. Okay. When kindling the lights, a woman accepts upon herself the start of the Shabbos and may not perform any malacha afterwards. Other members of the household may still perform malacha until Shabbos commences. Even the woman too may do so until this time if the need arises, provided at the time of the kindling she intends to accept the Shabbos until it actually commences. That's 18 minutes after Shkia. An example of such a need would be preparing for mikvah, that is brushing the hair, cutting nails, flossing teeth. This should normally be done prior to kindling, but if a delay has occurred, these may be performed closer to sunset. Okay, I think we can continue. There's a lot. We can continue next time because you pressed for time. So basically, just light the candles at the right time. That's it.
Okay.
In a nutshell.
So Kevin rightly pointed out to me, guys. I said what did I say? Yom HaShoah. HaShoah, which was the day of redemption, instead of Yom HaShoah, which was remembrance. My Hebrew is not good, but ironically, there's a Freudian slip there.
Exactly.
I think if we remember those that have fallen, it will be part of the redemption. This is part of the days of redemption. So I think that although it was an accidental slip, on a deeper level, that is true. I want to thank Kevin for making me aware of it. I really appreciate it, Kev. I'm sorry about that. And
you did nothing wrong. You don't have to apologize to me.
I think it was no coincidence that Yom HaShoah is obviously the same day as my grandfather. It's his memorial because, obviously being in that Holocaust generation, many people were not super religious because we can't imagine what they went through.
Yeah.
And we just want to, obviously, maybe all the 6 million Jews have a aliyah for their neshama, including my grandfather. Amen. And in the merit of our learning, may it help somewhat. May it help a lot.
Amen.
All right, guys, let's get started. We're on the 33rd daf, A1. And the Gemara cites a brisa that discusses a similar case to the one discussed by the brisa about the carpenter and the blacksmith. Let me turn off my phone before there's an accidental homicide here. It drives me mad. Technology is driving me crazy. Stand it. All right, guys. So this is a new brisa, similar to the one about the carpenter and the blacksmith. The rabbis taught in a brisa if workers came into the employer's home to claim their wages from the employer, and the employer's ox gored them, or if the employer had a dog that bit them and one of the workers died, the employer is not liable to pay the kofar payment. Okay? The other opinion is that the workers have the right to enter the employer's home and claim their wages from the employer. So here, before we're discussing a case that, I don't want to confuse the issue. This is not an issue that a person doesn't have the right to claim wages. This is an issue in terms of jurisdiction. Where does the employee have a right to claim wages? At the employer's office or at the employer's home? So before we discuss that, I want to discuss one particular issue with regards to the kofar payment. So I have an ox. Is there a difference, would you guys say, about paying the kofar if the ox or the dog was muad or if the ox or dog was tam? What do you guys say? I wanted to be interactive this year.
Just rephrase that.
All right, so you've got two issues here. You've got an issue regarding domain, okay? And you've got an issue regarding, perhaps there's an issue regarding whether or not you pay kofar if the animal was muad or tam. All right? What do you say? Does it make a difference if it's muad or tam, and why?
Which animal?
It doesn't make a difference. If an animal has been forewarned, whether it's a dog or an ox. So an ox means it's vegetarian, so it's unlikely, Arthur's correct, that it would eat somebody unless it had rabies. But it's got horns that can really pierce and gore. So in a vegetarian case, we talked about this in one of the previous stuff. You're either talking about carnivorous animals or animal that has the ability to use its physiological features like a horn, etc., to pierce through a heart or create a death in that manner.
Okay.
So either way, does the aspect of tam or the aspect of muad come into play with kofar?
Kofar is supposed to. Sorry.
No, carry on. So, no, Gavin, you could go ahead.
No, I was going to say kofar payment is only if the person doesn't. Kofar is when it's tam.
Tell me why.
Isn't it?
You tell me. You've learned 32 daf, guys.
I know.
You're putting up the heat now. It's going to get a lot tougher.
Trying to revise all 32 in my head now, which I can't do. No, just remember, if it's tam, you would pay the kofar payment. If it was muad, then you'd be liable for. Good question. No, then you're liable to. Well, you've got to put the animal down if it's muad, and you're liable to pay also the full kofar payment. I think the problem was with muad. You can't. That's where the problem comes in. If the animal's muad, if it's not muad, if it's tam.
All right. Muad, hang on a sec. Let's just stop before we get ourselves caught a little bit. Let's just define. This will help you guys. Let's just define muad and tam and what the difference is with regards to death of a human being. What is muad?
So muad is guilty. I mean, they've done it 3 times. So it's not accidental. If that animal kills somebody else, then you're liable for. I can't remember.
You're basically being negligent.
So the animal's put to death, and then you have to make all the payments that you need to make to the family, and you have to deal with it in the next world because you're not going to be. No, you don't have to. It's the animal. Getting mixed up with animals and humans.
All right. let's just make things a little bit clear for you. Whether or not the ox is muad or tam, we're going to address the issue now. The reality is, if it's muad, you can't get hanoah, you can't get benefit, and the animal gets put to death. Now, the reality is there are opinions that even if the animal is tame, if it kills a human being, the animal for sure gets put to death, and you don't get benefit. Okay? Because the killing of a human being is a very, very serious affair. Okay, they used to do this in Africa, in Kenya and South Africa, when it wasn't just the Kruger Park, when the British and the Boers obviously took over Africa. The minute an animal gets a taste for blood, you put it down. They used to hunt lions that had a taste for human blood. So as far as that's concerned, a human death is seen as very serious. There are opinions that there's no kofar payment for a tam animal, and there are opinions that you pay a half kofar for a tam animal. Even just like you pay half payment for tam, you pay half payment. I think it was Rabbi Tarfon, as far as I know. Okay? That you pay half kofar. But it's irrelevant in this case, because the issue doesn't have to do with an animal is muad or not. It has to do with a very simple issue. If the animal is muad and somebody comes into your premises without permission, you don't have to pay kofar. That's the bottom line. Because you were not negligent even if the animal is muad. If you've got a psychopathic Rottweiler and you're protecting your property, and some person is breaking in to steal your candlesticks and your silverware, you are not liable to pay for kofar. They're broken into your premises. If you take your animal out and Brutus moves some special guy to park, you've got a problem, because you're now in the public domain. But in the private domain, nobody has a right to enter your premises without permission. That's what you have protective dogs for. You don't have to pay kofar in that regard. Does that make sense, guys? So we're dealing with a case here of do they have permission to enter your home, or do they not have permission to enter your home, your workers that are applying for wages? Okay, so this is at the crux of the issue. So the Gemara considers the circumstances of the Bryce's case. If the employer is commonly found in town where the workers can readily approach him for their wages, then there's no reason for the workers to come in to your premises at home. But they certainly don't have any rights to enter without permission. But if he's only found at home and he's not available in public, then workers have a right to get paid. And then they have permission to enter your home, since they have a right to claim the wages. Okay, that's the bottom line. So the Gemara explains, why would you have another opinion here? What are we talking about, another opinion? In other words, if it's a case where the employees came to collect their wages and this person is available both in the city and at the home, why would there be an opinion to say that you're not liable for kofar payment? Because again, the person in that particular case, if they're not liable, if they're not available in the city, then they have to be able to pay from their home. So why would it say in that particular case that you're not liable for a kofar payment if your animal kills that person? Why would there be a diverse opinion? In other words, you'd either have two cases, very simple. The guy's available in the city and only in the city. Nobody has a right to encroach in your home for wages. If he's not available in the city and only available at home, then he has every right to claim the money from you at your home. And in that particular case, if your animal maws him, you are liable for payment because he can't get hold of you and is entitled to get paid. So why would you have an opinion that says there's no kofar payment in that particular case? So the Gemara wants to clear it up, and it says, look, it's very, very simple. The Gemara explains that it's necessary only to say that the brisa deals with a man, in other words, an employer, who is sometimes but not commonly found in the city. And they, the workers who came to his home to claim their wages, called to the employer from the door of the house, and he said to them, yes. Now, yes could either mean, according to one master, come in, yes, come in. Or it could mean yes, meaning stay where you are, what do you want? Those are the two different opinions, okay? So the worker is to consider to have entered without permission if yes means what do you want? Or yes means that that you do enter with permission if yes means coming. Does that make sense? So it depends according to Tosfot where the employer is found. If he is easily approachable in the city, then in that particular case, they have no right to come to his home. If he's not easily available there and sometimes available, they have a right also to visit him at his home. Okay, so far so good. Yes, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, 33a2. The Gemara notes that another brisa reflects one of these views. I'm going to explain it now. A different brisa was taught in accordance with the one who says yes, in such cases implies stay where you are. For it was taught in the brisa, if a worker entered the premises of an employer to claim his wages from the employer, and the employer ox gored him or his dog bit him and he died, the employer is not liable to pay kofar, even though the worker entered with permission. So this seems very strange. So developing its proof, the Gemara analyzes the brisa. Why should he not be liable to pay kofar where the worker entered with permission? Rather, it is not necessary to say that the brisa refers to where the worker called at the door and the employer said to him yes. And one can learn from here that yes, in such cases implies stay where you are. Certainly, this is what the brisa must mean when we can indeed deduce that the brisa follows the Tana Kamma of the previous one. So what is it talking about? Firstly, I would advise you, just as a lesson, that when somebody says yes at the door, you don't assume that you think that you've got permission to enter, especially if he's got creatures there, that you say to him, yes, can I enter your premises? And that yes itself is not an acknowledgement of, yes, I've heard you, but yes, can I enter? Always for your own life protection, just say, do you have animals? Do they have teeth and claws and things? Can you put them away? Am I got permission to enter? Are they locked away? Just in terms of safety, this is what the Nachlas, Moshe, and Tosfot suggest. Because just because the employee thinks he has permission to enter doesn't necessarily mean that he has permission. So I just want to discuss with you what the two opinions are in a very clear manner. Opinion is, this is an argument that the Rosh notes that the Rif omits the law altogether. What law does the Rosh quote the Rif as omitting? This case where in the last brisa he has permission to enter, or so he thought he had permission because the guy answers yes to him. Okay, so what does this actually mean? This means that the Gemara's ruling in this matter isn't absolute, guys. It varies according to the circumstances, as the Gemara has a distinction between the cases in which the employer is commonly found in the city and cases where he's not commonly found in the city and he's only found at home. All right, so guys, call it back to me so that I understood that you understand.
Okay, so if the guy says yes at the door, it could have two meanings. Yes, you're allowed to come in, or yes. What do you want? Don't come in.
Correct.
Okay? So unless
Correct.
you have explicit permission, don't go in.
Okay, so correct. So Arthur's saying very good. Arthur's saying like Tosfot, you can't assume anything. You can't assume anything. When you call out a guy and he says, "Can I come in?" and the guy says yes, sometimes a person doesn't hear you. If the guy's got creatures with teeth and claws and anything that could kill or maim you, check. Can I come in? Am I allowed to come in? That's your first time. Second one, are the creatures locked away? That's your second statement. Okay. Now, what case can employees come to the employer's door? In what case?
If they are owed money by the employer.
No, that is the default position always.
Oh, is it the default? Okay.
Yes, Kevin.
If he's not at his in the town, in the city at the time they demand their wages, then they can go to his home.
Correct.
And
Correct.
request.
So if he's not easily available in the city, they need to be able to get paid. Okay, and therefore, if they need, then they've got permission to go to the person's home. So the employer can't play games with the employees. He has to be available, and when he says yes, it means that he has to be available to pay them. And yes means they're allowed to enter his home if he's trying to play shenanigans and he's not available. Absolutely, Kevin. So
But James, okay.
either he's got to be available in the city, readily available.
Yeah.
Either he's got to be readily available in the city or available in his home. If he's not in the city, he has to be able to pay them from his home. That's the bottom line. And therefore, he has to give express permission. So the circumstances vary according to that particular thing. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah, but you can't just because he hasn't paid you in the city and you've got explicit permission to go to his house, it still doesn't mean you can just walk into his house without.
Exactly.
You're still going to get proper, clear, explicit permission to come, not just like a yes, a full-blown, can I come in? Are the animals away? The problem with the animal story, what I find, if the employee is a brand new employee and he's never been to the house before, he wouldn't know that they're dangerous animals. So is he still required to say that? Like, do you have dangerous animals or anything like that?
Well, I would think absolutely, for the very fact of it that your default position always, Gavin, is that you've got to assume that a person wants to protect their home. Okay?
Especially in those days.
Correct. So, for example, when the Rosh quotes the Rif, now who's the Rif? It's Rabbi Isaac Al-Fassi. Okay? So it's basically Yitzhak ben Yaakov Al-Fassi HaKohen for Gavin over there. And basically, he was born 1,000 years after the Talmudic period. Okay? He was an Algerian Talmudist. Okay? He was born in 1013 and he died in 1103. He lived a long time, considering in those days they didn't have medication and everything else. Lived an extremely long time. And basically that's the Rif. Okay? Now the Rosh is Asher ben Yechiel. Okay? Now he was born a little bit later, so that's why the Rosh is quoting the Rif, because the Rosh was born in 1250, or some say 1259 until 1327. So obviously quoted the Rif because the Rif is earlier than him, preceding him by about 250 years. Okay? But in those times, middle-aged times, things were more informal. People could enter not enter your home, but they could go to your home to ask you for wages. As Gavin quite rightly said, you couldn't just enter a person's home. But things in Talmudic times were much more formal. You couldn't just go to a person's premises to demand wages. And it goes without saying, Gavin, that for sure you couldn't just enter. Both in terms of decorum protocol as well as safety, yeah?
In today's times, you don't know the word coming and come in. Somebody say coming, and you go in. No, I meant I'm coming. You're not supposed to come in.
Yeah.
Coming and come in is very similar. So, but in those days,
that's actually very true. Is that coming, I'm coming, or come in is very similar. So one has to make sure that, Gavin, that if you've got a property, the assumed position is that somebody wants to protect their property, obviously. So there are four things going on here, guys. There are four things, bottom line. Number one, there's an issue of tam and muad. What about the kofret payment? Do you owe it on tam versus muad? That's a separate discussion entirely. But for sure that an animal has to be put down if it kills a person. That's for sure, because that's rendered a dangerous animal. That's according to a lot of opinions. According to Kofir, I think it was Rabbi Tarfon that said you pay half payment even for a tam animal for Kofir, and the rabbis turn around and say that you don't pay half Kofir payment for tam. You don't pay anything. Okay? For Muad, for sure, the animal gets put down and you get no hanoah, no benefit. But in a place where it's protecting, it's your property, you don't have to pay a kofir payment. The person doesn't have permission to enter. You only have to put the animal down if you have given permission to enter, and you have to pay kofir payment. Does that make sense? So that's the one issue. The other issue is about permissions in your property. Does an employee have the right to even come to your home to collect wages? And the answer is, if you aren't found at the city, he's entitled to meet you at your home. He has no permission, as Gavin said, to enter without your permission. So an employee asking has to be abundantly clear that you have given permission for his own life, for his own common sense. So it does differ in Talmudic times where things were more formal compared to today, as far as that's concerned. Guys, is the case very clear? It's very straightforward. There's nothing complicated about the case. All right. So what we're going to do, guys, is I want you to, in the merit, Gav, your phone quite a few times, not your fault, the session has rung. Are you able to just put it off during the shir?
Yeah.
Please, Buffy. All right.
I'll put in airplane mode, right?
Yeah, but in future, in the beginning of the shir, if you can, keep your phones off. It really is helpful. I really would appreciate it.
I just put mine to D&D, do not disturb, and I get the messages afterwards.
All right. Guys, I want you to, it's always, the word Neshama and Mishnah have the same Hebrew letters, and one always does Mishnayos for those that have passed on, especially 6 million Jews. We're about to hit a new Mishnah. I would like Kevin has taught us. I'd like Arthur to read it. Arthur, can you read it slowly and carefully?
If you give it to me.
Okay.
Okay. It says here, if two oxen were fought with and injured one another through the act of Karen, they pay for the excess half damages. If both were muad, then they pay for the excess full damages. If one was tam and the other was muad, and the other muad, if the damages done by the muad to the tam is greater, he, the muad, pays for the excess full damages. And if the damage done by the tam to the muad is greater, he, the tam, pays for the excess half damages. The Mishnah continues. And similarly, if two people injured one another, they pay for the excess full damages. Similarly, if a person and a muad animal injured each other and the damage done by the person to the muad is greater, or if the damage done by the muad to the person is greater, he, the one who did the greater damage, pays for the excess full damage. If a person and a tam animal injured each other and the damage done by the person to the tam is greater, or if the damage done by the tam to the person is greater. If the damage done by the person to the tam is greater, then he, the person, pays for the excess full damages. If the damage done by the tam to the person is greater, then its owner pays for the excess half damages. Rav Akiva says, even in the case of a tam that injures a person more than the person injures it, the owner pays for the excess full damages.
Excellent. Well read, mate. So, guys, that, yeah?
Second, there seems to be like a whole paragraph more or less that's repeated from the top to the bottom. It's more or less the same.
Okay, there is a difference.
It could be just in the bottom. I think the top part of the bottom and the bottom part is very, very similar. I'm just saying. I just heard it now. It sounded virtually identical. Right?
Okay, there are a lot of differences, and I'll want you to prove it, because there was something that Rav Simcha Steinhauer taught me. He said the Rosh Hashiva of Mir reads a Mishnah 6 times before he reads the Gemara, 6 times. So I want Gavin just to read this now, and let's just see if we can make more sense of it. I know it, but because I've done some prep, but I want you just to read it, Gav. Well read, Arthur. This is not indicative of you not reading it well. You read it very well. You read it very carefully. It's just I wanted to percolate.
That's perfect. It's got Mishnah is 2 oxen that were tam, fought with and injured one another through the acts of caring. They pay for the excess of damage. If both were muad, then they pay for the excess full damage. Okay? If the tam and the other muad, if the damage done by the muad to the tam is greater, he, the muad, pays for the excess of full damage. If the damage done by the tam to the muad is greater, he, the tam, pays for the excess of damage. Okay. The Mishnah continues, and similarly, if 2 people injured one another, they pay the excess of full damages. Similarly, if a person and a muad animal injured each other, the damage done by the person to the muad is greater, or if the damage done the muad to the person is greater, he, the one who did the greater damage, pays for the excess full damage. If a person and some animal, this is where it looks repeated compared to the above paragraph. Seems to be virtually the same wording. If a person and some animal injured each other, and the damage done by the person to the tam is greater, or the damage done by the tam to the person is greater, if the damage done by the person to the tam is greater, then he, the person, pays for the excess full damage. If the damage done by the tam to the person is greater, then the owner pays for the excess of damage. Rabbi Akiva says, even in the case of a tam that injures a person more than the person injures it, if the owner pays for the excess full damage.
Good. So Gavin did notice thing, they look similar, but the one is if 2 oxen are fighting, and the one if an ox and a person fights. So right.
I disagree. Sorry, 1 second there. I don't mean to be rude, but if you look at that, it's repeating it with the animal and a person twice. It's repeated.
Yeah,
but the difference is the one is saying muad, the other one saying tam, which is slightly different.
Exactly, Gavin.
And at the top, he's comparing the 2 oxen. One is muad and one is tam. The muad one pays full, and the tam one, even if it's more, pays only half.
Well spotted, Arthur. I was waiting for somebody to spot it. So, Gav, before you disagree, which is cool, just one needs to absorb the Mishnah a little bit. So what I want you to do...
I only got it on the second time. The first time I didn't get it either.
Correct. And the more you read it, all right.
Yeah.
So exactly, Arthur, well spotted. Gavin, you need to make mincha and maariv. We're not learning tomorrow. I want you guys to prepare. There's 2 Mishnahs coming up this week. This is one and there's another one. I'm going to put on the group in terms of what I want you guys to learn. And I want you just to prepare. You can prepare with the Sefaria. It's fine. I don't mind if you prepare with the Sefaria. Just keep it light and tight. And have a great Shabbos. And lovely to see you guys. No learning tomorrow. It's Friday.
So Sunday we got an hour.